Thank you so much, Aisha, and thank you so much everyone for coming in for this panel. We have less time, so we'll try to make the most out of it. I have a fantastic panel with me today, and I'd like to briefly introduce them. We have Zainab Qureshi, who's the founder and CEO for Beach Education, जो हमें online join कर रही हैं. That's Zainab. Zainab's joined in the very early hours at US. Thank you, Zainab. We have Aftab Roonjha, who's the co-founder for the Bali Labs in Balochistan, which is the Wang Lab of Innovation. Thank you, Aftab, for being here with us. We have Arwa Salim, who's the head of technology for education at the Citizen Foundation. Thank you so much, Arwa, for flying in all the way from Karachi to be here. And then we have Abdul Ahad, who's also a former friend and a colleague, who is the director of learning at Noon Academy. Um, and just to be a classroom teacher for right now, and if I could ask, कुछ लोग people are sort of बातें हो रही थोड़ा सा, if you could have more attention, and if you could have the door closed for could you get the door? Classroom teacher mode back on. The topic for the discussion today is something that's very, very close to my heart and very close to people who are in this panel. It's कि हम अपने under-resourced settings में digital learning initiatives किस किस्म के देख सकते हैं और उनसे हम क्या insights draw कर सकते हैं. I think I won't set the stage too much because I think previous sessions, especially the one that Anand was moderating, has already done that. So I think one of the things that I would love to dive right away is to think about what do we not know right now. हमें क्या नहीं पता है डिजिटल लर्निंग के बारे में. अगर हम अपने K-12 लैंडस्केप को देखें, what do we not know about how students learn digitally? What do we not know about how if teachers are prepared to teach digitally? What do we not know about the internet access? So if we could just briefly, if each of you could share about हमें क्या नहीं पता है, and anyone could start.
So I'll start, and I'll set the context a little bit about the area I work in, of course. So I work in the Citizens Foundation. As some of you may know, the Citizens Foundation, TCF, works across Pakistan, and we work specifically in underserved communities. So currently we have nearly 2,000 school units and nearly 300,000 students enrolled in our formal schooling programs. So जब हम education technology की बात करते हैं, थोड़ा सा हम some of the main challenges we face in any kind of technology interventions is infrastructure, obviously. Electricity, internet infrastructure, जिन इलाकों में हमारे school है, this is just not a guaranteed resource. I think लोगों ने out of school access और उसकी बात की है अभी in previous panels and stuff. हमारी जो schools communities हैं उनमें बच्चों के पास personal devices ज़्यादातर नहीं हैं, right? And they might have some access to a shared device, but उस shared device के अंदर भी आज के दिन में भी gender disparity है in whether they can access that device. So हमें तो schools के अंदर अभी तो बच्चों को provide करनी है कुछ resources. And so whenever we think of designing any kind of intervention, we really have to keep cost effectiveness, scalability, बहुत बड़ा network है, and sustainability of these in mind. So I think that's the context for our network at least.
I'd just like to clarify your question first. So, are you asking what do we not know on how digital learning can be impactful, or what do we not know about? Could you just repeat that?
Sure.
Once
So
again?
the intention is कि हम अपने landscape के बारे में what do we not understand clearly about. I think it's very easy for us to sort of dive into a conversation on digital learning, but I thought maybe setting a premise on हमें क्या नहीं पता है अपने setting के बारे में, अपने context के बारे में, that can help.
Interesting. So, I think अगर हम नून की बात करें, अपनी बात करें, so obviously we would go in from the mindset that we want to learn from the communities that we would operate in. हमें खुद नहीं पता होगा कि हमें बच्चों को क्या पढ़ाना है और कैसे पढ़ाना है, but जहाँ जाएंगे, we will do our research, we will ask the stakeholders, we will understand their problems, and then we will implement whatever we want to implement. I'll talk about our hybrid approach in a bit. Noon is is apart from its online channels, we're also moving to a hybrid approach जहाँ पर हम online या asynchronous या asynchronous तरीके से पढ़ाते हैं students को in multiple countries. So we're doing this in Saudi, in Yemen, we're about to start in Pakistan. But what the hybrid model looks like is very different from one place to another, because we can't adopt a cookie cutter approach, right? कि जो हम सऊदी के elite schools में भी काम कर रहे हैं जहाँ पर 20,000 या $10,000 school fee है, but we're also like, I'll talk about the program that we're doing in Yemen for 2,000 kids, which is a refugee environment where like they don't have anything, right? Education is not even their topmost concern. Basic necessities unki peet nahi ho rahi. So those two environments, it can't be the same solution. So just to, I'm not sure like if I can answer your question directly, but hamari approach, and I think that should be the approach, that wherever you go, it has to be student first. You have to understand the context, and even in Pakistan, I don't think it's going to be similar across the board, right? अब एक जगह से दूसरी जगह जाएंगे, कहीं इंटरनेट नहीं होगा, कहीं devices नहीं होंगे. When it comes to technology, sometimes there's not like an amazing teacher available. Sometimes students want to learn something else, right? Their requirements are different. They want to learn a skill which they can monetize. So we have to figure out what the student needs are, what the context is in that particular environment, and act accordingly. So yeah.
Thank you, Abdul. Zainab, could we turn to you?
Yeah. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Lovely to be here with you all. Look, I think I would flip the question a little bit, and I would first say, what do we know? Okay, because there isn't too much that we know, but there are some basics, right, to set the premise for it, right? So what we know, like the other two speakers before me also said, what we know is कि पाकिस्तान की लैंडस्केप बहुत डाइवर्स है, राइट? वी नो कि आपने अगर स्ट्रेट ऑफ द बैट आप तीन क्या कहते हैं टीयर्स में आपकी लैंडस्केप को डिवाइड कर सकते हैं, जस्ट टू फॉर ईज ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग, राइट? तीन बकेट्स में. सो यू हैव योर sort of top, your highest cost bucket, where you have your elite private schools, and they are very similar to the context of the schools in Saudi, or the schools in the Middle East, or the schools in the rest of the world, right? Where they have the infrastructure, they have the facilities, they have the money, they have the internet connectivity, they have the electricity, right? Then you have like a wider sort of base of like your mid-cost schools, where they don't necessarily have the infrastructure inside school, but they may have access to infrastructure at home. So if nothing else, they will have a smartphone at home. They will have some kind of internet connectivity at home that they may or may not get access to in school, right? And then you have the wide base of the pyramid at the bottom that is huge, that is the majority of your kids, and that has zero access to any kind of infrastructure, definitely none in school, and often not much at home either. And the exceptions to that are schools like TCFs that are catering to this cadre, but are providing that infrastructure, but they are like a very tiny percentage of what most kids have access to, right? And what do we know about these people? We know कि इनके पास जहाँ स्मार्टफोन्स हैं वो शेयर्ड हैं. स्मार्टफोन से ऊपर डिवाइसेस ज़्यादा हैं नहीं. जहाँ स्मार्टफोन्स हैं वो शेयर्ड हैं. पूरा ख़ानदान एक या दो स्मार्टफोन्स इस्तेमाल करता है. हमें पता है डेटा पैकेजेस आर अ ह्यूज इशू. हमें पता है सबके पास व्हाट्सएप एक्सेस है, लेकिन उसके अलावा डेटा इज़ अ बिग प्रॉब्लम. तो अगर आपने कोई भी ऐप चलानी है या आपने यूट्यूब पे रिलाई करना है, तो आपको उसके अंदर कॉस्टिंग के अंदर डेटा की कॉस्ट आपको डालनी पड़ेगी अपनी, राइट? So that's what we do know. What we don't know is, with this sort of rapidly evolving landscape, with all these new AI tools, etc., coming in, what we don't know is that going to change the equation or change connectivity of people to what they have, right? And my prior on that is probably not, because the internet didn't change it. Lots of other things didn't change it. So why would this change it? But who knows how that's going to go, right? And the other thing, like I was listening to the panel before this on AI and education in higher ed, and what's happening in places that there is infrastructure. Maybe that will change the way some people work at the bottom of the pyramid also. But again, all of that is to be seen. We don't know.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Aftab?
Am I audible?
We can hear you.
Hello?
हाँ जी, आफ्ताब, हमें आपकी आवाज आ रही है.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Hello?
हाँ जी, आफ्ताब, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Ji, first largest province of Pakistan. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
जी जी.
Just a minute, just a minute.
So Aftab's connecting from Balochistan, so he works. He founds the lab जो rural Balochistan में, and this is exactly why you can see this.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है अब?
हाँ जी.
जी शुक्रिया। तो मैं अगर बलूचिस्तान की बात करूं, जो सबसे बड़ा प्रोविंस है पाकिस्तान का, मोर देन 60% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन डजंट हैव इंटरनेट एक्सेस। जो सबसे बड़ा अलमिया है, जो आप कह रहे थे कि आप वो बताएं जो नहीं पता है, जो मोर देन 60% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन डजंट हैव इंटरनेट एक्सेस। इवन अगर है भी, लाइक आई हैव एस्टेब्लिश्ड वांग लैब ऑफ इनोवेशन, जो हमने अपने पॉइंट टू पॉइंट इंटरनेट कनेक्शन है, जस्ट बिफोर start of the panel discussion, I lost the internet connection, and I had to come to the fields and sit under the trees to have a stable interconnection and to be a part of this panel discussion. So there are so many like challenges. Even before step here, I have to get out of my house, go far into my field, and put my mobile onto the tree and turn on the hotspot. Then I used to have my meetings on my laptop. So there are so many challenges.
Aftab, I
Even
think Aftab, is it possible कि video आप अपने off करें just to see if that helps?
relative communities, like we put our own tower on तो इतना कॉस्टली है और अनरिलायबल है। लाइक हेलो,
हाँ जी, please continue.
एम आई ऑडिबल नाउ?
जी.
यस। अगर इवन इंटरनेट अपने गांव तक ले है विद एस्टेब्लिशिंग और इनोवेशन लैब और ओन टावर, still it is very costly, it's very unreliable. लाइक हम कल की अगर बात करें कि लाहौर देयर वाज अ प्रोटेस्ट लसबिला में बंद था, तो आप इससे अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि कितने मसले मसाइल हैं इंटरनेट को लेके, एक इंटरनेट एक्सेस को लेके। लाइक ड्यूरिंग कोविड वी रियलाइज जो है आप for boys, maybe they go to the mountains, maybe they travel to cities, they have more opportunity, बहुत ज़्यादा challenges थे, they have mobility issues, they have transportation issues, they have access issues, they cannot go like travel like boys. So because of that, we established that challenge during COVID. We realized there should be an innovation lab. That's why we established it.
Aftab, sorry Aftab,
Like,
interrupt कर रहा हूँ. Aftab, आपकी I think आवाज़ काफी ज़्यादा इधर sort of sketchy आ रही है. We're not able to understand. Is it okay if we can reconnect and then we can
yeah, sure.
get back to you?
Sure. Okay.
But I think thank you so much, everyone. I think Zainab's idea of flipping the question also helps because that was the next one. But I think starting off with that, I think that really helps. I think one of the things I'll try to sort of ask a few questions जो कि previous panels में नहीं पूछे गए. I think one of the things I would love to understand is कि हम जब अपने students के बारे में सोचते हैं, especially students in underserved communities, sometimes we unconsciously lower benchmarks. We sort of call back the goals. हम जो एक high end private school के लिए जिस उस बच्चे के लिए जो एक sort of benchmark set करते हैं, बाकी students के लिए जो हमारे majority हमारे बच्चे हैं उनके लिए we feel के इनके लिए ये चीज़ काफ़ी हो गई, हमें शायद इतना ambitious नहीं होना चाहिए. Do you feel कि ये जो mindset है when we think about digital learning initiatives, do you think this mindset often translates or extends through? And उसकी क्या cost हमें pay करनी पड़ती है?
Maybe. I certainly think that as far as, so I can only speak for the work we do, as far as the rigor of curriculum, etc. goes, as far as the expectation goes of what they need to complete, we are definitely aligned with, you know, the same national curriculums, the same rigor of academics is required from our schools. तो वहाँ पे तो definitely पूरी कोशिश होती है कि उसके अंदर कोई हमारे पास gaps ना रह जाए. Perhaps where we might have been a bit more behind is in the digital initiatives. Having said that, we have created some which we'll talk about when you in the next round perhaps. But तो ये हम कोशिश तो जरूर करते हैं कि कोई फर्क ना हो. ऐसा हम उन अंडर एस्टिमेट भी नहीं करते मे बी हमारे नेटवर्क को, हम ज़रूर कोशिश करते हैं. वी हैव डैबल्ड इन सॉर्ट ऑफ एट होम इनिशिएटिव्स एज वेल. कराची लाहौर उसमें भी बहुत ज़्यादा अंडरसर्व कम्युनिटीज़ ऐसा नहीं है, तो हम जिन इलाकों में पॉसिबल होता है हमें लगता है वहाँ भी हमने डैबल किया. बट आई थिंक फॉर अस टू बी एबल टू फाइंड सॉल्यूशंस दैट विल रियली स्केल एंड मेक एन इम्पैक्ट, दैट्स समथिंग we're still kind of like figuring out.
So yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. So very important question, and one that we take super seriously at Noon. And from an equity perspective as well. We don't want any of the programs that we're running, let's say in a specific country, we don't want there to be a difference in the quality of education that we provide to students, let's say, who can pay a lot, and students who are coming from under-resourced environments. So one way that we do that is by scaling top teachers. So if we have an online classroom, students who are on scholarships, who can't, pay 500 or 1,000 rupees themselves per month, they're also learning in the same classroom from the same teacher as students are who are like paying significantly more, right? So from elite schools. But that's one way that we try to make sure that through technology, we can scale quality learning. So there shouldn't be a difference in approach. That being said, sometimes needs can be different, right? So, and the context can be different. So we do have to be mindful of that. So for instance, some of our students and some of the research that we've done here, they don't, their life goals are not necessarily कि वो इंटर मैट्रिक करके यूनिवर्सिटी चले जाएं वहां पढ़ लें. They want to learn a skill in the short run through which they can earn something. So that's something that we're also exploring. So again, it has to be student centered, what the student wants. But in certain situations, there can be constraints as well. जहां पर internet ही नहीं है और device है ही नहीं, तो वहां हम क्या करें? So and we faced that over the past couple of years, 2-3 years at Noon, when we were operating online. We saw that only students who have devices, who have a stable internet connection, they can join the classroom. जिनके पास नहीं है वो क्या करेंगे? तो उसके लिए we're now experimenting with a hybrid learning approach where we're trying to build nodes and centers. And we're doing that in multiple countries where we can provide those devices, where we can provide connectivity and bring in quality instruction there to make sure there's equity in education. But उसमें भी एक uncertainty है कि everywhere we don't have, and that's something that we don't know yet, right? In other countries we have satellite internet, Starlink लग सकता है, but पाकिस्तान में कब आएगा? इसकी green light कब मिलेगी? We don't know. But if something like that comes along, then for rural areas at least, we're very optimistic that we would be able to just have the same bar. And the last thing I would say is that ज़रूरी नहीं है कि हम similar bar ही उनके लिए करें, but we can also think about leapfrogging as well. So for instance, when we talk about AI, I think the way that artificial intelligence can be used or generative AI can be used in contexts like ours can be far more beneficial in some cases than in other areas as well. Obviously, इसमें time लगेगा because internet connectivity की requirement है, devices पे अभी models नहीं आए. But over time, what we can have is we can have language instruction or language tutors in this context, which is, maybe like who knows, but in a year or 2 years from now, if you have this technology progress at the rate at which it's progressing, then it can sort of have more impact for these students in this part of the world. Another example of that is, I think India में शायद ये इस्तेमाल हो भी रहा है with an organization called Balsaki. So people who cannot read and write, they can now use AI to answer questions to Google, right? Because it can be translated into many small different regional languages. So वो जो पहले दिमाग में हमारा था कि okay, we have to translate all of the content into regional languages, and that will be very costly. That's no longer the case, right? And जिनके पास अगर एक WhatsApp phone पे है, parents, students, they can ask medical questions in their language, not through like text, but through voice. So if we think about the use cases where its technology is really critical and really useful, I think it can be super impactful for those students who have very specific needs there. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we have a similar person who's working on an Urdu AI bot that's been in testing phase in Pakistan as well. Jisme you can type in Urdu, you can share a voice note in Urdu, and then you can also receive the sort of a response back from the AI bot in the same language. So I think that also sort of circumvents the need to be able to be right in particular grammatically correct words as well. Zainab?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I don't just piggybacking off of what was just said. I don't think we're gonna have to wait till next year. Beej is actually working on a language bot for Pakistan right now, and we're planning to go live next month, inshallah. So we're doing this for now, starting off actually with teachers first, not with students directly. But the idea basically is how to get English language proficiency in, and we do that using a bot that is going. It's a combination of actual curriculum and like content that we have made, like language experts have made, augmented by a bilingual Urdu English chatbot that can actually do voice conversation and back and forth. So we're super excited. It goes live next month. Let's see how that goes, and then we'll definitely report back to you guys. But just to answer your question, your earlier question about कि क्या हम standards बदलते हैं, देखिए पहला तो सवाल ये कि हम कौन हैं, right? Who's the we? And what are the standards that we're talking about, right? Who is it for? And this was also said before me, कि what are the objectives of the people you are talking about, right? So when you say कि we have higher standards for rich kids and lower standards for poor kids, actually, let's talk about what our standards are, right? We are struggling as a nation with foundational literacy and numeracy, right? We have 52 million kids in school, a whole bunch of 20-something million out of school, and even the 56 million who are in school, half of them cannot read or write by like 78% of your 10-year-olds cannot read a sentence, right? That is like dismal. So when we talk about standards, at this point, standards छोड़े हम इस वक्त foundational literacy और numeracy की बात कर रहे हैं, right? So अगर आप यही अपना standard लें और से कि भाई हर बच्चा कम से कम एक जुमला पढ़ सके और basic math कर सके, so then you are at a place where you're like, okay, well, how do you make that happen, right? And how can digital initiatives or make that happen? And how can we possibly augment physical in-person classrooms and potentially teachers to make that happen? Because look, at the end of the day, a lot of education and learning is about human relationships. And yes, tech can enable that, but tech cannot replace that, right? And at the end of the day, the quality of your classroom is going to cap out at the level or the quality of your teacher. So that is something that we need to keep in mind, right? So whether we augment the teacher through the human or we directly do it through tech, all of those things are things to keep in mind. But yeah, to your points, and yes, of course, they have different people want different things in life, right? Rich kids often have completely different life objectives to poor kids. Yes, skills play a huge part. Yes, how what they want from life plays a huge part. But we're still at the point where we're struggling with foundations. So big question mark.
No, absolutely. I think that's a important grounding take on that. I think that the sort of the lens for that question was much more on the rigor or the intent or the intensity that we put behind a particular initiative for a particular or for and वो कितना differentiate करता है. Arwa, just turning to, just to understand more about TCF. So as you've already said, TCF के sort of, 1900 से ज़्यादा schools हैं, 3 लाख के कम से कम बच्चों को आप लोग cater करते हैं, and you guys have schools in the most remote and underserved areas in Pakistan, right? And there's a lot of fantastic initiatives that are coming up, like the Dastak online teacher training program, digital learning program. So I think institutionally, if you could help us understand कि TCF का जो mindset है or thinking about integrating tech in education, how that's evolved, and what are a few sort of factors that have influenced that shift?
So I think in recent years, the mindset has evolved to try and include a lot more tech in schools, but we're very cautious as an organization, right? It really has to have an impact. अगर हम कोई चीज़ करते हैं तो हम उसको बहुत ही in depth study करते हैं कि इससे वाकई कोई फायदा हुआ कि नहीं हुआ, कि अगर कोई resources technology के अंदर जा रही है, so is that the best use of that money that's going into these resources. So we're cautious about any investments in tech and stuff, but we've certainly become a lot more open to it. So आपने जैसे 10 तक teacher training program की बात की, that's a program that TCF has created to spread its sort of pedagogical expertise to schools outside even of the TCF network. So the teachers जो low cost लो फी प्राइवेट स्कूल्स के अंदर काम करती हैं उनके लिए भी एक्सेसिबल बनाया जाए, तो वो एक ऑनलाइन इनिशिएटिव उनके लिए लिया गया हुआ है. That works little bit blended. A lot of the resources are kind of given, and then you have come into those classrooms, and yes, there's a lot of discussion in breakout rooms. So Dastak works kind of online, but there's an element of hybridness in there. बाकी जो हम इनिशिएटिव स्कूल्स फॉर्मल स्कूलिंग्स के अंदर ला रहे हैं उसके अंदर and I'll totally sound like a broken record about it, but it's offline first solutions, right? So all TCF schools have an audiovisual room जिसके अंदर offline content available है, whole class के लिए and teachers के लिए that's available. In all our secondary schools, we've revamped our computer labs in recent years. जिसके अंदर now there is individual access for students for interactive learning for the computer science. हमारा digital literacy program जो है उन्हीं labs को अच्छा, and that also is entirely sort of offline. So we were able to run those because those run offline. तो उसमें students थोड़ी बहुत programming भी सीखते हैं, logical skills सीखते हैं. It's a really good digital literacy program that was I think done in collaboration with another organization focus. So that's something that we've run and that we've managed to scale. So we have more than 300 labs across Pakistan जिसके अंदर ये हमारा grade 6 to 8 के लिए digital literacy program चलता है. उन्हीं लैब्स को लेवरेज करते हुए हमने एक और प्रोग्राम इनिशिएट किया हुआ है जिसमें हम स्टूडेंट्स को इंटरैक्टिव डिजिटल कंटेंट जो है प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं. सो वीडियोस, गेम्स, quizzes. We're running an after school program, and so we've only done a sort of a small pilot yet, लेकिन उसको बढ़िया हमने rigorously test किया था. And so we did find that students, so it's a self-led program, right? So बच्चे आते हैं after school और वो थोड़ा सा supplementary resource की तरह इसको इस्तेमाल करते हैं, and then they and so we've been able to provide them with this because we've again partnered with an EdTech organization who've had an incredible platform that's allowed us to give this interactive content to students almost entirely offline, and that's how we see at least in the medium term things to work. तो अभी तो हमने उसकी थोड़ी सी evaluation की, so we're seeing statistically significant improvements in student learning outcomes. तो हम the way our your initial question was how do we think about it? We really have to rigorously test and see कौन से initiatives में आपका actual learning outcomes पे impact हो रहा है, and then हम और हमारे लिए हमें लगता है कि हम इसकी operations को sustain कर सकेंगे. Because it's challenging. It was challenging to implement, and it will be as we expand the program. And so we really have to think about those things.
Thank you, Arwa. I think your insights on both teachers and learners on sort of integrating tech, but adapting it to their context through offline access, for example, I think that's a really important one. Easy points like segue karte hue, I would love to understand from Abdul, Ahad, and Zainab, how do we make learning stick? Learning की जो stickiness है in our context, how do you do that? What are 2 to 3 things that I know the sort of incredible work that both Beach and Noon are doing in terms of WhatsApp teacher communities that are building up, and you guys are learning from that. We have I know Beach is also working on imparting 21st century skills through very bite-sized courses. Just the sheer amount of reach that Noon has had in terms of learners and the sort of the bridging the gap between a high quality teacher and a learner. So आप लोगों के काम से क्या पता लगे? Like, what are like 3 broad insights that that you can say in this panel which makes learning stick?
So I think nothing new in terms of what we all know, how learning happens most effectively is through engagement. If you can't engage the learner, nothing's going to happen, right? So that we try to make sure that our online content plus our hybrid offerings, they're all super engaging, and we actually measure engagement as a KPI. And engagement for us is not just time spent. By the way, we define it as active engagement. So are students talking? Are they asking questions? Are they completing the work? Are they doing things? Are they is the mic getting unmuted? So with technology, we measure all of these things And that's what we want, not just students passively watching a video, which leads me to my second point. And that is that we want learning to be active and social, to build the cognitive skills and the social or social emotional skills that students need to succeed. So what do we mean by that? Let me describe that by an example. So if you go into a noon hybrid classroom, uh, the teacher who's teaching online, they don't have a lot of talk time, right? So they're actually giving students a chance to participate, discuss, present, do activities as much as possible. And that's what we try to, and that's what we've been trying to do on our online platform, plus our hybrid learning approach as well. That gives students as much ability to do things and learn by doing. So I think that's what makes it stick, not just listening. And in education technology, that's one common pitfall, is that if you just give students access to a video, they'll keep watching it, and by watching that video, they'll learn. We feel that they learn by doing things, by presenting them, by discussing and doing active learning, and then discussing in groups as well, right? So we don't promote a view of technology where a student is sitting at home और उसके पास device है हाथ में और 6 घंटे बैठ के बस अकेले पढ़ रहे हैं. That's not how we imagine learning. And learning has to be fun. It has to be social. It has to be if you learn from peers, if you learn from teachers and facilitators, at the end of the day, it's a human experience. तो वो जब तक नहीं होगा तो I don't think they'll be able to relate to, like, why they're doing it, उसका फायदा क्या है, and at the same time it ends up being boring as well. So through all our channels, we try to focus on these two things to make learning stick.
Before I come to you, Zainab, just one follow-up question, Abdul. In elements, man, that you were mentioning, sort of, making learning social, making it fun, making it sort of engaging. What's the hardest element to work on when you're sort of using tech to do it?
It's definitely cracking the engagement part. So how do we make sure that, because engagement, we've come up with certain generalized mechanisms of students learning inside the classroom, where we actually are able to see through a data-driven approach that through these general activities, students engage a lot. But it just takes a lot of time to figure those out, especially in a large classroom, right? So just for the audience, I would like to clarify the context. We have sometimes like 300, 400 students connected to the same classroom, where there's one like online teacher and their learning facilitators or mentors that are physically present inside the classroom. So how do you make sure that students are just like not sitting idly and they're staring at the projector or the screen? So our onus is not, we don't build the technology first and try to shove that into the classroom. We actually try to do offline activities first. So सबसे पहले टीचर आके offline पढ़ाएगा, देखेगा क्या कौन सी activity stick हो रही है, what are kids engaging with. That's the research. Like most of our work that our product team does, that our tech team does, is that it's offline. 6 महीने 4 महीने हम activities करेंगे. Teacher in some of our boot camps वो पढ़ाएंगे and figure out how can we productize that to make it scale. But it's not like we don't build the technology first to just put it in the classroom and see what happens.
Thank you so much for sharing. Zainab, similar thoughts to Abdul Ahad, different.
So everything he said, everything Abdul Ahad said, 100%. And then we have done two other things in addition to this. Number one, actually, let me just take a step back. I think the number one thing, even before everything Abdul Ahad said, right? So yes, you make it interesting. Yes, you make it engaging. Yes, you make it fun, right? But most importantly, you make it relevant, right? So you make what you're doing for people, whether it's the kids or the teachers, you make it something that they want to learn, they need to learn, they are needing that pinch for, right? And we've seen this even more so with teachers than with students, right? And the way we've done that is we've actually co-created our courses with our learners, right? So we've sat down with them and we've said, okay, well, what is it that is interesting to you? What do you struggle with? What can we put in that will actually make it relevant for you? And इस वक्त जो हमारी communities चल रही हैं, जो WhatsApp communities भी चल रही हैं, we are so much of it, right, is a social component, right? So for teachers, we have communities where they are asking questions and we are building content around the questions they are asking to be able to answer those specific questions led by experts in those specific areas, right? And for students, what we realized over this, we did this fabulous summer program that was like a massive hit, right? It was a proof of concept for us. So it wasn't too large. It was like about 200 kids, but it made us like they got so excited about it. And this was a school in rural Faisalabad. There were kids from a bunch of places, but the majority of kids were from school in rural Faisalabad. It was all on WhatsApp. It was fully digital. There was no physical component, but the kids got so excited and we did cohorts, right? And we realized कि भाई एक class time पे summer vacation में हम ये करेंगे, हम English पढ़ेंगे, हम कहानियां सुनेंगे, हम बातचीत करेंगे, हम pronunciation पे काम करेंगे. And they just got so excited. By the end of the camp, the feedback we got from parents was, one, I don't know what you did, but the kids actually wanted to, like, they were punctual. वो खुद जाके 10 बजे क्लास शुरू हो रही है मैम, या to the mother के क्लास का टाइम हो गया, क्लास का टाइम हो गया, क्लास का टाइम हो गया, right? Two, at the end of the day, parents said, okay, what can we do to extend these classes and make them longer? हम आपको ज़्यादा पैसे देंगे, आप प्लीज क्लास लंबी कर दें, right? So how do you get to that point is by making it relevant and by making it fun and definitely adding a social component where they can talk to other people and to some sort of an instructor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zainab. I think some relevant, fun, and then I think another thing you said was helping them drive the learning as well. So I think that's a fantastic insights. I think और सवाल थे, but I'm going to pause and park ताकि participants can also ask. So just to ask, so we can have space for 2 questions, I think. People can raise their hands, and then we'll have our volunteer Palvasha go to them. And so I see a couple of hands, so we'll come to you.
Thank you very much for a very informative session. It's a pleasure to be here. Mr. Mohsin, as you're referring earlier to the stickiness phenomena, I presume you're referring to the Malcolm Gladwell book, What the Dog Saw, of how sticky the message could be. So there are 2 comments for the panel, 2 general thoughts, in my humble opinion, and would request very humbly for the panel to give their reflection on that. First of all, that when we talk about the ODL domain, the online distance learning, it has various components, right? So the stickiness phenomena needs to be in everywhere, right? So if we start with that, the content's development, the media and the video production and incorporation is very, very integral, okay? So now we are talking about the in-video intelligence, about how the content needs to be made, for which we need to have experts from the media industry who understand the pedagogy and instructional design, and then can come up with the component. And then we talk about the holistic systems, then we talk about the LMS. So the stickiness phenomenon, this evolution needs to be in everywhere. So this first. Second, holistically talking, that in the earlier sessions also, people have mentioned that, we may opt for AI. There may be some type of policies that can be opted or adopted to, and so on and so forth. My humble opinion and perspective on this is that it's not our choice anymore, okay? So we are talking about the virtual world. We transcend boundaries, we transcend borders. And if we do not position ourselves to what the international community or the things are, then obviously we won't be able to make it. So
right,
these are 2.
I think those are good comments. But if like, could you share what the question was?
Yeah, I just want reflections and the comments from the panel. First of all, regarding this particular aspect, regarding the components need to be addressed. For example, you asked a question earlier to one of the panelists, its challenges made. So one of the challenges that I see is that making the contents itself, because people sitting in front of camera talking will not suffice.
I
and
get
the
that.
second is the holistic picture about how to adopt and adapt to the international ODL scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get one more question. I see hand there. Go to the man.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aisha Salahuddin. We're talking about FutureEd and tech ed today. So I just want to ask one question. कि हमारा जो curriculum है, it's like so old. It's been taught since ages. तो उसमें क्या changes आप लोग राय या लाना चाहते हैं? And is it possible? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I will let each panelist can take any question.
All right, so I'll just give a quick comment on the engagement mechanism. I feel like with the way we drive engagement is through a data-driven approach, and that's what worked for us. We tried like bringing in instructional experts who could make engaging videos, but nobody really knows like what clicks with students from all aspects or all backgrounds or all contexts. So like हमने जो ये देखा है कि अगर हमारे पास millions of students हैं जो engage कर रहे हैं, we do experiments and activities, and through those millions of data points we form insights. Yeah, we're onto something here. So I think that's what's worked for us personally. And on just quickly, I think आपका सवाल ये था कि curriculum पे, just my personal thoughts. I feel yes, it's the like most important thing that we can do is teach what's really relevant to students, and it's I don't think that will be necessarily a standardized curriculum for all. If we can build in some room for making sure that we're building in skills that are important for students, that's obviously वो तो standardize किया जा सकता है. But पढ़ना उन्होंने क्या है, क्या skill हासिल करनी है in terms of hard skill. It could be something like at the high school level, you're teaching kids how to do any of the like soft skills or the digital skills that are important, design ho gaya, analytics or whatever. But that's one part of it. But even there are other skills that are very useful in the offline work. I think offline world, jisme pehle Hassan was talking about, somebody else in the previous panel was talking about. So vocational skills are super important. उन पे भी काम किया जाए, तो that would be amazing. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Arwa or Zainab, any additional thing you guys would like to add?
Yeah, I can just take the piece about the curriculum. I would actually say that curriculum change, we know, is hard. Or Pakistan mein to it's a lightning rod of a subject. But I will say that जब आप digitally कुछ पढ़ाते हैं तो उसमें थोड़ा सा आपको एक maneuvering space मिल जाती है. So what we're doing, for example, we are currently focusing on English. So that's how we package everything. But within that, we build in so many soft skills, right? Intangible skills and digital skills that you don't actually see, or you don't, if you were to pitch to someone, they wouldn't necessarily be interested in, but we package it into our curriculum. So that's how we're doing the making things more relevant and more 21st century.
Jenny, thank you so much, Zainab, Abdul, Ahad, and Arwa. This is a fantastic insight.
Thank you to all our panelists for their insightful contribution and to Zain for facilitating this fruitful session.